Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X Twitter at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to Monday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. There have been many attempts to bury the Snyderverse by Warner Brothers, by different leaderships of Warner Brothers in the past few years. They have tried everything. They brought in Joss Whedon to recycle Zack Snyder's Justice League. They failed to bury the Snyder Cut. We finally saw it. Then they tried to bring in Johns and Berg to bury the Snyderverse. They failed as well. Then Walter Hamada brought in Andres Muschietti via The Flash to bury the Snyderverse yet again. They failed. The Flash movie failed to recycle the DC universe, right? But James Gunn took over that narrative, and now James Gunn is WB's latest attempt to bury the Snyderverse. Will James Gunn be successful in burying the Snyderverse? Well, he's decided. Zaslav and all of them have decided to do it the hard way by going at a Superman movie. James Gunn is writing and directing his own Superman movie, Superman Legacy, to bury the Snyderverse, in an attempt to bury the Snyderverse. There's no two ways about it. Now, people out there have a perception of Zack Snyder and his fans. They think all the Snyderverse fans are just the ones on the internet. There's some toxic Snyder fans, as we know, but they're not kind of the end of the Snyderverse fandom. They love him in Mexico, China, India, all throughout Asia. We've recently saw with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, that film did very, very well in China. It's actually the most successful film, superhero film, CBM, in China in a very long time. I don't believe that's because of the quality of the movie. It's because of Zack Snyder's casting for Aquaman, one Jason Momoa. So Zack Snyder's popularity goes globally. Snyder's a very interesting director. You either think he's a modern day genius or you hate him. You think he's a terrible director, that he couldn't direct traffic, or you think he's one of the best directors you've ever seen. My point of view towards Snyder is, I love him, and I love his art, and I love the way he makes movies. But I also like what James Gunn does. But if you were asking me what pill I would take over the Gunn pill and the Snyder pill, I would take the Snyder pill every day. But as we've discussed many times, I'm excited about Superman Legacy and what James Gunn's attempting to do. For me, I don't have my hat in a ring, right? My hat is absolutely 100% in the DC ring. I'm a DC fan. If I like Superman Legacy, I like Superman Legacy. If I like Creature Commandos, I like Creature Commandos. My love for Snyder, my frustration to what was done to Snyder and Cavill and that vision of DC doesn't come in to whether I'm going to enjoy Superman Legacy. And I'm also not one of those Snyder admirers that's going to boycott DC, because my DC fandom comes first and foremost. But it is interesting. I have decided today to discuss this. These many attempts, these unsuccessful attempts to bury the Snyderverse hasn't worked. Wouldn't they be better off just trying to make their movies rather than trying to bury what Zack Snyder did? It's going to be more difficult than they think, because Superman Legacy is going to be compared to Man of Steel in every way. Despite what you see on social media, Man of Steel is hailed by many as the best superhero movie and the best attempt to make a Superman movie. I don't do this or that. I'm not going to tell you that Man of Steel is better than Superman the movie, and I'm not going to tell you that Superman the movie is better than Man of Steel. Superman the movie didn't have the technology available to it that Man of Steel did. It would be unfair of me to hail Man of Steel as better than Superman the movie. It would be unfair of me to hail Superman the movie better than Man of Steel. I think they're both equally outstanding attempts to make a Superman movie. Now, both of those films have a different mentality. Superman the movie just wants to have this kind of, I suppose, the Superman from the comics. The Superman that's, all in for this truth, justice, and the American way. This wish fulfillment character. Donna wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. Man of Steel, in a lot of ways, is faithful to certain comic book iterations of the Man of Steel. It's not like it's disloyal to the comic books, but what it does differently to the comics, it puts Superman in the real world. That's what Snyder was actually attempting to do. I love Man of Steel. It's been very interesting recently. I mentioned this, I think, yesterday or the day before in one of my other videos where I said I've been watching a lot of these Man of Steel Snyderverse reaction videos, because what they do now is you get these content creators sitting there watching a film and reacting to it. I think it's a fabulous concept, and I've become very obsessed with it and interested by someone watching a film for the first time. And it's very interesting the love these content creators are finding with the Snyderverse. Very, very interesting that their subscribers are saying, you've got to see Man of Steel. You've got to see the Snyder Cut. You've got to see Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. And I think that's very, very interesting. And we've recently all seen Rebel Moon. Again, Snyder pretty much saying to everyone, I'm never gonna fucking change. I don't care that you hate me. I don't care what you say about me on social media. I'm never gonna change. I'm an unconventional maker of films, of art, and I'm not gonna change that. And I don't want him to change. I love Snyder the way he is. I love his films, especially his comic book movies. For me, he's a very special filmmaker. To you, he doesn't have to be. I don't want to live in an echo chamber. I don't hate people that don't like Snyder's stuff. What I find very foreign, very weird, is the deep hatred that some people have for Zack Snyder and his work. It's not just about not liking what Snyder does, it's the hatred personally they have for this man. The content creator Truth31, or the Truth31, is kind of a great example of the hatred someone can have. Not only does he hate Snyder fans, he deeply hates Snyder's work. Hates, right? And he's very supportive. He's plugging out positive stuff about Superman Legacy and how it's going to be better than Man of Steel. He makes content just to trigger the Snyderverse fans. Basically, that's how he makes money. I personally don't know how anyone can do that. Lots of people do it. They're just there to trigger you, to get a reaction, because reaction is the best way, an easy way for a content creator to make money. As we can see from my likes and my views, I'm not making money as a content creator. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to say my bit. I'm on X throughout the day, giving out my takes. I'm not going to make any money on there from being a content creator, but I just want to tell you how I feel about things. And it's very, very interesting because we have two films here. We have James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, right? Some people love this film, some people don't. Snyderverse fans say it's a crappy, bad film because it's James Gunn, and James Gunn is doing a Superman film and he's taken over DC. So they automatically hate James Gunn. I don't automatically hate James Gunn. I really liked The Suicide Squad. But do I prefer it to Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut? Absolutely not. For me, this is a modern day fucking classic. Good luck to anyone trying to make a better Justice League movie, because it's so different. This has got Zack Snyder written all over it. It's unconventional, it's 4 hours long. You know, Because it's 4 hours long, it has room to breathe. It develops every character. The way it does The Flash and tells us Barry's story, and the way it tells us Cyborg's story. And we look a little less at Aquaman, but we do look at Aquaman. But yeah, it's all very, very interesting and very, very Zack Snyder. I prefer this movie to any James Gunn CBM. But I don't dislike Gunn's CBMs. I like them. I'm interested in his mentality. But, as I said earlier, if I had a choice to make, I would choose Snyder as a filmmaker over Gunn. But I don't hate James Gunn, and I don't hate what he does. It's very important to say that. We do live in a world today where you don't seem to be able to like both filmmakers. You can't, it's, as I said earlier, it's the this or that mentality. And I think this is a very interesting talking point. But we go back to the fact that James Gunn is merely yet another attempt to bury the Snyderverse. Because if we go back to Hamada, James Gunn had been fired by Disney, so Hamada Emmerich took the opportunity to bring in Gunn to make DC movies. They said, here, make any movie you want. We would prefer you to make a Superman movie. He said, I don't want to, at this point, do that. If I had a choice, I would do Suicide Squad. They said, well, we like you. We think you're a talented writer-director. Do a Suicide Squad movie. Could you at least write a Superman film after Suicide Squad? So even before starting to do Suicide Squad, he agreed to at least write Superman Legacy. Not direct it, not be the leader of DC, because at the time, Walter Hamada was the president of DC Film. Now, when Zaslav came in, he took a look at the script, that is the Superman Legacy script, as it was being developed by Gunn. He said, this is brilliant. I don't understand why you can't run DC. And that's how James Gunn became co-CEO with Peter Safran of DC Studios. That's how the story goes. Now, it's one thing to be a really good writer-director, as Gunn is. I think everyone must concede that at the very least. It doesn't mean you're a good person to run a whole franchise, to be a co-CEO of DC Studios. So, right now, we don't know if Superman Legacy is a successful film. It's also one thing to make Superman Legacy a good, successful movie, but to branch out into developing a whole franchise, as Gunn is attempting to do. He's also going to be delivering this year Creature Commandos, an animated series, mini-series about a group of people, a group of unconventional heroes. Now that, of course, is James Gunn's strength. But is James Gunn a one-trick pony? I think every writer-director, every director has their strengths and weaknesses. I think we all know what Zack Snyder's good at, right? And he sticks to what he's good at. James Gunn's strengths are taking, a group of unconventional characters and making them relatable and making them as heroes, right? Not perfect heroes, as flawed heroes. So, in terms of the authority and Creature Commandos, you would imagine he's going to do a very good job with both those super-powered teams, or whatever they are, right? Because I'm not an expert on Creature Commandos or the authority. I look forward to seeing what he does with both those worlds and those kind of superpowered teams. So I'm not going to dismiss what he's attempting to do. I'm not going to boycott what he's attempting to do. What I am going to do is have a critical eye over it and be balanced about everything I say about what Gunn does. But if Gunn and Safran and Zaslav think that they can bury the Snyderverse by being successful, they couldn't be more wrong. But as I said earlier, the thing that's when Superman Legacy is reviewed and released, it's going to be compared to Man of Steel. It's either going to be hailed as much better to what they'll say as the not so good Man of Steel. That's not my opinion. You know what I feel. I love Man of Steel. I mean, as I was watching someone's reaction to Man of Steel, I noticed something new about the film. Because the more you watch a piece of art, the more new things you discover about it. And I was very interested in terms of David Goyer, how much science fact there is in Man of Steel in terms of, kind of a world engine. Theoretically, world engines, is something that I don't even know if it does exist, but it's something that you could attempt to, it's actually a real thing, because they do go on other planets attempting to try and make them hospitable to human beings, because they know this world is fucked. So that's a real thing. We have NASA exploring planets as we speak, looking for hospitable worlds. That's exactly what Zod's doing in Man of Steel. This is exactly what the ancestors of Krypton were doing, going on other planets, making them hospitable for Kryptonians. That's where Zod gets his idea of grabbing the world engine and turning Earth into Krypton. So there's a lot of science fact in Man of Steel. It's very, very interesting. I learned a lot of science from Man of Steel. But there is a documentary called The Science of Superman, and in there it does explain how much science fact actually is in Superman's stories, especially in the comic books and the original concept of Superman. So it's very, very interesting. David Goyer wrote a very, very contemporary Superman story, and the idea was to put Superman in the real world and show how people would react to someone like that. It's a very interesting film for me. It looks beautiful, it's stunning. Snyder killed it, nailed it, and the story by Goyer and Nolan was absolutely, for me anyway, monumental. Then you've got BVS, which I also adore, and of course I adore the Snyder Cut as well. So for people like me, and the people out there watching this video who also love the Snyderverse, we love it with a passion, because there's so many things that you can, you peel off those layers, and there's so much more. The more you watch his films, it's amazing. If you appreciate those films, it really is an amazing experience every time you watch them. And no matter how much WB attempt to bury the Snyderverse, I don't think that they can. And this is the problem that they have. Because Snyder is, in my book, is a brilliant director, an unconventional director, and what he did with DC, including Watchmen, is something that many people around the world love. I think the Snyderverse stuff is more loved globally than it is in America, and it is interesting. He's loved a lot globally, right? I mean, Man of Steel and BVS did do well, right? Not well enough for what WB wanted, but much better than the other movies did. I'm not saying Man of Steel and BVS made a substantial profit or anything, but I'm saying in terms of the amount of money they brought in, it's a lot better than, for example, Shazam, right? I mean, yes. The first Suicide Squad movie from Air, or whatever whoever ended up kind of fucking around with that movie, which was Jeff Johns, that movie made more than Man of Steel, not more than BVS, of course. Wonder Woman made more than Man of Steel, but Zack Snyder was heavily involved, as we discussed on multiple occasions, in that Wonder Woman movie. So, but in terms of the box offices of the DCEU, as we've discussed before, Snyder's movies, and you may as well put the first Wonder Woman in that kind of line of Snyderverse, because it is. He was heavily involved in that movie. There's no question about it. So that first Wonder Woman film is absolutely part of the Snyderverse as far as I'm concerned. Not officially directed by Snyder, but my God, he ghost directed a lot of that fucking movie. And there's no denying that. And Snyder won't deny that. But he also won't admit that, very interestingly. But, so, for me, there's a quality in Snyder's movies, and the quality of Snyder's movies is much higher than the other DCEU things that we saw after he left, and even more so recently. And it's very interesting that The Rock's Black Adam, at least in terms of production value and VFX, looks very similar to a Snyder movie. It's big, it's aggressive, it's violent, it's action-packed, it's bold. Even, Lorne Balfe's score is very Hans Zimmer, isn't it? It's very Junkie XL. And I find that very, very interesting. So to me, Adby, DeLuca, and Johnson, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, were very looking to kind of, I suppose, give us that Snyder feel yet again. And although it didn't make the money that they all would have liked it to have made, it certainly made more money than most of the recent movies apart from Aquaman and The Lost Kingdom. And I've already explained why. Because people love Zack Snyder's Aquaman. Zack Snyder's casting for Aquaman. Now don't forget, James Gunn isn't going to keep Jason Momoa as Aquaman. That's a fact. He's going to make him Lobo. And I hope that we all don't care that he's not Aquaman anymore. I'm excited that he's going to be Lobo. Look, as I've said before, I'm open to what Gunn's doing, but I'm not open to the fact that they're using James Gunn as they used Machete. And, let's go back to Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon wrote and directed the first Avengers and the second Avengers, right? Age of Ultron. I like both those films, and it's clear that WB thought, well, this is the right director of one of the most successful CBMs ever. Who's going to care about Zack Snyder? They thought just by plastering that guy's name on that Justice League movie, Justice League, that would do the trick. What happened after that movie? People started fighting to release the Snyder Cut. So it's funny. They attempted to bury Snyder, to make us forget about Snyder with Justice League, but by implementing Justice League, they did the very opposite. There's no burying the Snyderverse. There's no question about that. Even, look, and people think, like some Snyder fans are desperate that like James Gunn's stuff fails. But I don't think, even if it's successful, moderately or hugely, that people it's gonna bury what Snyder did. Snyder's still gonna have his fans. The Snyderverse will be remembered for the next 60 to 100 years. I'm sure of it. And there will be new generations admiring those movies. The Snyderverse has many more admirers than you could possibly imagine. But if you live in an echo chamber for or against Snyder, you won't realize that. Even the kind of toxicity in some of the Snyder fandom don't really understand how huge the love for Zack Snyder is. But for a lot of fans in Mexico and Asia, it's not about going on the internet and, clenching their fists. They quietly admire the man's work. Because that's how we used to enjoy stuff. Growing up, we enjoyed stuff silently. Growing up, we hated stuff silently. Because there wasn't a place for us to start ranting and raving. Some of the shit I see on social media, either for or against, entertainment, is very triggering. And it's very sad. And everyone seems to think they're an expert on entertainment, an expert on what's good and what's bad. What about you, Mick? No, I'm not. Look, I understand the industry. I absolutely understand the industry. But I'm no more of an expert on what makes a good movie or a bad movie. It's a matter of taste, everyone. And all I ever do is give you my small, unimportant opinion as I'm doing right now. It's not about me being right and you being wrong. If you despise Zack Snyder and you don't like his work, that's right for you. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying that I personally admire, love the man, respect the man, and admire and love his work. That's all I'm saying to you. I'm not saying that you're wrong for not loving his work. But I probably would say you're wrong for having this deep hatred personally of the man. That's a different thing. Getting triggered just because I say I like the stuff and having a critical, balanced eye of what WB have attempted to do over the years by burying Snyder and his work. It is impossible. It's never gonna get buried. Can WB finally find a replacement for Snyder? Is James Gunn the right replacement for Snyder? Is what he's attempting to do the right thing? It's all very, very interesting what's going on right now. James Gunn is constantly on threads. He's answering questions to people. I don't know if those people are legitimate fans or if they're studio bots. I still have my suspicions, by the way. There's a lot of bots on the internet that you can't trust as being genuine people. It's interesting that, the owner of Twitter, Elon Musk, came in and said, we've got to get rid of these bots. Let's verify people. People should be verified. But then he decided to make that a profit kind of thing where he was charging people to be verified on X. I'm verified on X via paying for a blue tick. I'm not ashamed of that. I did that to get a further reach because I'm a content creator. But then he kind of pulled the drawer out and said, oh, now you have to get Premium Plus. Ultimately, Musk is a con artist, but there are a lot of bots now on social media, and it's not just on X where this is a problem. On Threads, I'm talking about X. All those people on Threads supporting James Gunn, asking him questions, could just be studio bots. It could just be part of the publicity and PR to show the general audience that people want to see what he's doing. But there's no evidence to support that Gunn's stuff's going to be successful in terms of what we've seen recently with DC. Last year was a great example. Shazam! Fury of the Gods, flop. The Flash movie, flop. Blue Beetle, flop, right? 3 movies that James Gunn heavily attempted to promote via being the new co-CEO of DC Studios. Nobody listened to him. And if nobody said, oh my God, James Gunn said this is a good movie, he said the Flash movie was one of the best films he'd ever seen in the genre, and nobody believed him, rightly so, because he was being disingenuous. Again, I'm being balanced here. It's not about me hating James Gunn, because how can I hate people that I don't know in reality? It's not about that. It's about me being balanced and honest about what I see. James Gunn lied, pretended he liked the movie, which was a very, very bad movie. It wasn't, in my opinion, it was a bad movie. It was put together by the studio. They brought in a director who was just going to nod his head and do whatever it took to get the job done. Someone who doesn't really give a shit. And now he's going to get, and because of that, he's going to direct Brave and the Bold. It's all very obvious. If you look at Andres Machete, he's not an auteur. He's a studio director. And he just does as he's told. And he's going to get his reward of Brave and the Bold. The evidence is there. So the evidence thus far with the DCEU and the non-Snyder stuff, there's no evidence to say what they're attempting to do with Legacy and these other films is going to work. And Legacy, make no mistake, whether Legacy is successful or not, right now the point is Legacy has to be successful. Or WB crumbles, James Gunn's career crumbles. There's so many reputations at stake with this movie. So they recently did a documentary, didn't they? Where they ignored Zack Snyder's Justice League and were putting clips of Justice League. Do you remember all of that? This is how deeply and heavily they are trying to bury what Snyder did, because they're scared of what Snyder did. This is why Gunn won't release the Air Cut, because he's scared people are going to say it's better than his Suicide Squad movie. It probably is. I'm probably going to prefer David Ayer's Air Cut to James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. I like this film. I think this is a really good CBM. It's not one of the best I've ever seen, but I think it's great. The cinematography, the action, the violence, the jokes are okay. I liked it. I like this movie. It's not a classic. It's not one of the best CBMs ever made. I don't believe that Gunn's ever made one of the best CBMs. But he's a good director, and he does do really good, entertaining comic book movies. No question about that. It's called balance, everyone, right? Instead of just saying, I hate him, because I don't, right? I like his work. But he's got a big challenge. As we've discussed many times, this film has to be successful. The media have tried to say, well, no one can expect this film to be to make this money. Yes, that is the pressure he's under. This film has to make 800 million plus at the very least. It has to be reviewed well. I'm sure the kind of people that they've got in Access Media will give Superman Legacy at the very least a great write-up. Because if Superman Legacy wasn't to get a good write-up, that means, it must be bad. We don't know. We just don't know. We know what this film's going to be. We don't really know the plot of the film, but we do know it's a living, breathing DC universe. So, time will tell. We'll wait and see. But one thing's for sure, whether Gunn's successful or not, they're never going to be able to successfully bury the Snyderverse.